What's up, guys? Welcome to the Linecheck podcast. It's me, Brennan Villarreal, your host, and today I'm in the studio with Chachis.
Hello there. Thanks for having me.
How's it going? Where did this name come from? I know it's not your real name. Your real name is Charles.
That's right. Well, it actually comes from the kids in my family. I've got several nieces and nephews, and when they were little, Charles was a bit too much for them to handle. So it started off as Cha-Cha, and then it evolved into Chachi, and then it just kind of stuck around. So
when I think of Cha-Cha, I think of that the character in Grease, and she's the dancer.
Totally.
So yeah, Cha-Cha did not really.
It didn't have the same ring.
Yeah.
I think Chachi works well, though.
Yeah. Why did they choose that? Like, why did they say that? Do you know?
Well, I mean, I think it was just for a little kid. It's easier to get the cha down, and the RLES, is a little more difficult.
Yeah,
so
but not Charlie, though.
Charlie, my sisters call me Charlie.
Okay.
So the thing about being called Charles is people feel free to just come up with any nickname that starts with CHA. So I've heard it all. You know?
Yeah, that's hilarious. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your business and, besides your nickname?
Sure. Well, so we're called Chachis. We're a sandwich shop that just opened in San Pedro. We're located at Beach City Market, which is on Pacific, right by Cabrillo Beach. And we've been open for about 10 months now. And we're just slinging excellent sandwiches. We've got a really tight menu of 7 sandwiches that I like to think we've perfected. And things have been going great.
What's your favorite sandwich to make?
My favorite sandwich to make is the tuna melt.
I love a tuna melt.
Oh, totally. And for me, and one thing about a lot of the sandwiches here that I didn't really realize until I was opening my own shop is just how biographical menus can be in the sense of it's not random which sandwiches I picked. They all have like a whole history with what I've made throughout my life, experiences I've had. So like for the tuna melt for me, that's what I snacked on throughout my childhood. That's what my mom taught me to make as a snack. It was more typically like a tuna melt where I just throw some bread in the oven, make a little tuna salad, throw a tomato and a slice of cheddar on there and bake it for about 10 minutes. So that's like the origin of the tuna melt. So I've been just refining my tuna salad recipe for 30 years now, and and this is the result.
What makes yours unique from other, say, tuna melts?
That's a good question. I think that it's really subtle.
And that's the sandwich I didn't eat.
Yes.
I ate the other one.
That's okay. I mean, it's all about really subtle differences in balance with tuna salad because the ingredients are often pretty similar. You've got tuna salad, there's mayo, mustard, and then the veggies are key. I go with cornichons, onions, and celery. But just getting the ratio exactly right. For example, I embrace the idea of tuna salad as very salady. I think it's important to have a good amount of crunch and veggie feeling. You get some tuna salads where it mostly just feels like you're biting into tuna, and I don't find that particularly pleasant.
It's like too moppy, too much mayo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just years of experimentation of exactly the right ratio of mayo to mustard, salt. I put a little paprika in there. So just all those subtle things add up to what for me is the perfect tuna salad, and hopefully other people feel that way too.
So you've been working on a recipe for 30 years, but I'm going to guess that you weren't planning to open a sandwich shop in that 30 years of perfecting your tuna melt.
I actually wasn't even planning to open a sandwich shop a year and a half ago.
Okay.
It was something that really kind of came together serendipitously after we moved down here. We came down with the idea of opening a business. Where are you guys from? So we both grew up in the Bay Area.
Okay.
But we've lived all over there, and we met when we were living on the East Coast. We were in New York.
How'd you guys meet?
We met on Hinge, actually.
Ooh, nice.
That's right.
My best friend met his wife on Hinge.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they got married in 2021. Yeah.
I had moved. I finished grad school, moved back to California briefly, and then moved back to New York. And then she was living in D.C. and moved up to New York, and I was actually her first date on Hinge when she moved up to New York.
Nice.
And we just hit it off, and it worked beautifully. Right before the pandemic is when we got together.
That's also when my friend, during the pandemic,
It's a good time to, because, when the pandemic hits, suddenly you got to hunker down.
Yeah.
We moved in pretty quickly because it was just easier at that point. Nice. And then when you got to live with someone for, a year, not going anywhere pretty much, just in the same small New York apartment, you really find out quickly how compatible you are.
Yeah.
And it worked, fortunately.
And then you told her, you're like, hey, I want to make sandwiches.
Well, I just made her a lot of sandwiches at first.
And you're like, whoa, you're really good at making sandwiches.
Yeah. Well, I've been cooking my whole life. So I like to think that my abilities extend beyond sandwiches. But that's what we ended up with here for a lot of reasons. One is we live right next to the sandwich shop, actually. We live 2 doors down. And so when we moved down to San Pedro, which was about 1.5 years ago, we knew we wanted to open a business of some kind. We were really thinking about creating a cafe. We're all about creating, kind of a community space. But after looking around, this spot came up, which was just down the street. It was a kitchen that's in the front of an existing store called Beach City Market.
Oh, cool.
And it actually used to be a sandwich shop about 10 years ago, but they shut down. Actually, that sandwich shop still exists right here in Long Beach. It's called Beach City Deli. It's kind of near the airport. If you haven't been there, I'd highly recommend checking it out. They've got excellent sandwiches, and we're a big influence on me.
Wow.
But so, like, for example, when we were figuring out what bread we wanted to use for the sandwiches, I went over there and was like, well, what bread do they use? Because I loved their sandwiches and I wanted to do the same thing. But, the insides are all different, but things like that, where it's just kind of that connection to the community and to my own history and just trying to bring it back. I think a lot of people in the community remember that spot and appreciate, some similar elements as well.
That's awesome.
But so the spot was available. It had been vacant for 10 years.
Wow,
they were
that's a long
the
time.
store owner was just using it as storage. But it had everything set up to code. Like, it had all the right sinks and everything, all the, the right materials for a commercial kitchen. And so we talked to the landlord, and he was like, I'm not really using it. So he gave us a really good deal on rent. What?
It's like, what is still?
Yeah, it was amazing. It's just kind of everything lined up perfectly. And so we came in, we were able to start this business with pretty low initial investment. We didn't have to take out any loans or anything. We just got in there. This is our first business. So we just got in and started experimenting.
Awesome.
And we were learning it all for the first time, figuring out suppliers, figuring out just every aspect of running a business through a lot of trial and error. But we've got things running much more smoothly now. And it's worked out beautifully.
How many months has it been?
10 months now.
10
we
months.
opened February of 2024.
Nice. How has the year been so far?
It's been great. There was a big spike at the start as everyone was trying the new place. Then it kind of settled into a more consistent level over the fall. But then what we've actually seen just over the last few weeks is we got our first big review on like a food influencer in LA. Cool. It was actually Hungry in LA.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And it was incredible, the response to that. Like, before, it was just a community spot, but over the last 2 weeks, people have been traveling from all over LA.
It's really
to try
crazy
it out.
what influencers and like food reviews or like news articles will do to a business.
Totally.
Like someone writes
I didn't fully
about
appreciate just how significant that was until we saw just that switch was flipped from suddenly people have heard of us after being this kind of obscure
you gotta
little
give
corner.
the local Long Beach food come a call.
Oh, we will. We're reaching out to everyone we can.
James will definitely go get a sandwich.
Cool.
I love sandwiches. Sandwich will be my favorite thing to eat all the time. It's my go-to meal when when you don't really want to cook anything. It's like, I got bread and whatever I want to put in it.
Totally. It's a perfect food.
Yeah,
perfectly
it's perfect
balanced.
food.
And San Pedro is very much a sandwich town.
It is a sandwich town. Bees.
Busy Bee is good.
Yeah.
But, coming in there, we found that the sandwiches were good, but it felt a little like a lot of the sandwiches you get there feel like sandwiches you would find 30 years ago.
Yes.
It's like classic sandwiches.
Yeah, classic.
They're not bad, but there's not a lot of innovation.
Yeah.
And we wanted to come in and do something a little more modern and creative and just kind of a new generation of sandwiches.
Do you want to explain your menu to me? Like, what makes it creative or innovative?
So I would say that the biggest thing about our menu is that for each sandwich, each of the 7 sandwiches, we've designed a house-made spread that goes with it. And so what that allows you to do is, and this is something that I wouldn't have necessarily thought to focus on when opening a sandwich shop, but it was a result of the constraints that we were working with. So this is a pretty small space. It's probably like 100 square feet, maybe a little bit over that. But there's no hood, so we can't cook anything in there. And so we're looking through the regulations, and what kind of heating or cooking we can do is we can still have a panini press in there.
Okay.
So the pressing was essential, but then also, like, how do you differentiate and kind of get creative with a sandwich when you can't cook the meat yourself? And, you know, the spread or the sauce or whatever you put on it, it's a really core component of a sandwich. I think it's something that is often underappreciated.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But if you look around at a lot of great sandwich shops, and some of the best sandwiches you'll find, they often have like a really unique sauce that's part of the sandwich. And so I wanted to really capitalize on that. And that's where I got to just kind of explore and be creative, and just kind of create all of the flavors that can turn a sandwich that at its base is just, you know, high quality ingredients, but harmonize everything and elevate it.
Yeah.
And so it's been really fun coming up with those sauces.
That's awesome.
And that's actually another part of our business is we package these spreads.
Okay.
And we sell them separately so that
Awesome.
people can create their own sandwiches.
I
as
read
well.
on an article that 2025 is going to be the year of mayonnaise, specialty mayonnaise.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting
That
to
might
me
pop
because
off for you.
because one of the things that I was explicitly trying to do with the sauce too is go beyond the kind of ever-present aiolis that you see, which are mayonnaise-based spreads that you find on a lot of sausages. And what I do with ours is actually the base for several of the sauces is cream cheese rather than mayonnaise. So you're still getting that kind of fat and creaminess, but the texture is very different, and it's kind of less oily, and it makes it much more spreadable. So you can kind of have denser sauces where you're putting more on it. And it's been so fun to explore just what's possible.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on almost 1 year.
Oh, thank you so much.
Do you have a culinary background before opening?
Not any formal training, but I've been cooking my entire life. I was raised by a single mom, and she taught me early to cook. In part because she is very much a foodie and loved cooking, but also is something that I could do to really help her out and enjoy it at the same time.
Yeah.
So I just I've thought for a long time that I would like to open some kind of food establishment. I didn't have a vision of creating a sandwich shop until recently, but it was one of those things where once the idea came, it became clear that like all of my experiences were able to add up to something really special, and it was the right thing at the right moment.
What was one of your favorite dishes growing up that your mom made?
My favorite dishes growing up that my mom made.
Or one that just comes to mind?
One that comes to mind is definitely like chicken milanese. So just kind of breaded chicken cutlets with, she would always do it with a lemon butter sauce. So she would cook the cutlets, fry them, and there would be all this like butter and like browned bits in the pan. And she'd dump a huge pat of butter in there and then some lemon juice, cook that down, reduce it so it gets a little thick, and then pour that over the chicken over rice. That was like one of my number one comfort foods growing up.
I know exactly that taste.
Good.
Sounds great.
Oh, yeah, you know how good it is.
That's awesome. Yeah, so moving forward, where do you see your guys' self in the future?
So I think that one of the interesting things about having to create this shop with the constraints of like size and cooking ability is that what we've ended up doing is actually creating a very versatile shop that can be set up in a very small space. And it can be set up anywhere, and that doesn't really require a lot of startup capital. So in the short term, what we definitely want to do is we're already starting to outgrow our current space and the storage available to us especially. So we want to move to downtown San Pedro in the near future and open up a bigger spot.
Nice.
We'd love to expand locally, open locations in Long Beach and Redondo Beach. And then long term, I can see this being something where we set up a franchise system. And it could be a franchise that allows people to create their own Chachis with relatively little startup funds because it's such an efficient machine.
That's awesome.
So I think that could be really cool just to allow a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs, who want to start a business, don't necessarily have $100K or access to a $100K loan, but could start it up with, I mean, we started up Chachis with less than $30K, and it worked. It was beautiful. So.
Wow.
Yes, my wonderful wife is leading a lot of the business side efforts. I get to focus more on the menu and the logistics, which is nice.
Yeah,
but
I also run a business with my my partner, and we both have our like sides of this. I'm the chef, and I do like other stuff too, but she does a lot of the logistics part of it, and without her, I wouldn't be able to. This whole thing wouldn't be a thing,
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's a recurring pattern that I've seen is that's a powerful combination where you've got one person who's kind of the creative side, one person who's the business side. And especially when they're a couple, it's an unstable force. We know several other couples that have that dynamic as well.
Power couple of the year.
Exactly.
That's awesome. What have been some of the struggles since opening?
The struggles since opening. Well, I would say one is just getting your name out there.
Yep.
Like you work and work to like get attention. You take out ads, and like sometimes it just feels like people must have heard of us by now. But then you go out there and like you talk to a bunch of people and like, oh, I've never heard of you. Like I literally live down the street from you, but I still haven't heard of you. So just powering through that period of like slowly building word of mouth, not knowing if it's really going to take off or not, but just being persistent and accepting that, like there were some days where we would be open and we would sell like 4 sandwiches. And just like picking yourself up after a day like that, which can be devastating, but just keep on going and keep on going and watch the month by month, the sales build. So that's a big one, is just being consistent there. And then others is just staffing is really a challenge, finding great people. We've been really lucky. We just hired an amazing general manager. Nice. Shout out to Danny. She's incredible. So I feel like we've been able to, get that aligned, but that wasn't something that was a given from the start. When we first started, we just had like a few of my nephews working in the shop and their friends, and it was great. But it takes time to find a staff that you can really like lock in with and be ready for growth.
Staffing is one of the hardest things to retain.
100%.
I think since like the pandemic started, it's just. It's a little difficult.
Totally.
I can go into all the reasons why, but I'm not going to today. We've talked about it on the podcast plenty times before. Tell me one of your favorite in the weeds stories.
In the weeds stories. Oh, what do you mean by in the weeds?
Most like a moment where you feel like you're sinking and you can't get out of it, and it could be during service when you're open. Like say you have a bunch of tickets. And you're just like, it's never ending, or maybe something broke and then you had to make something happen on the fly.
I mean, I think the biggest one for us is that when we started Chachis, my wife was actually pregnant. She was about 6 months pregnant.
Wow.
And so we were able to like really go pretty hard on Chachis for the first few months. But once that baby was born, it was like, how are we going to figure this out?
That's crazy.
And like literally the day after he was born in the hospital, my wife was still recovering. I had to go in to the shop and like I hadn't gotten any sleep the night before. We'd just been, with the baby and just like keeping going in situations like that and figuring out how we were going to balance childcare and all of that. It felt really overwhelming. Yeah, I'm glad we started before the baby was born, because if we'd tried to start this after the baby was born, I don't even know what we would have done.
Yeah.
But that was a moment where it was like, can we keep doing this? Like, I don't think it's possible, as a new parent to anticipate just how much work a newborn is. Yeah. And so it felt overwhelming for a while, but we've pulled through.
Amazing.
It's gotten easier.
Congratulations. Because that is tough. I have some friends that are chefs and, they had babies and I'm like, I don't know how you guys do it. This is like how you're at the restaurant and then like taking care of your, infant baby.
Totally.
That's like keeping you awake
and
till
I mean,
4 a.m., 5 a.m.
I got to say, having family support has been absolutely essential for that. Both of my sisters live in San Pedro, and they both had kids before. So they're available for babysitting. My wife's mother lives in Studio City, pretty close by. I don't think we could have done it without that kind of family support.
Family is important.
100%. And that was actually a big reason we moved back down to LA, was to be near family.
Cool. Yeah, so how is it being pregnant, starting a business? I mean, that must have been super hard. I've been watching The Bear season 3.
Yes.
I'm a little late because I just haven't been feeling like watching stuff that I do kind of. But yeah, one of the managers in there is pregnant while they're operating a business.
3, don't tell me.
But yeah, so I can kind of, stressful.
It is stressful. I honestly think we had to be a little bit delusional to do this. Like I think my husband said I was 6 months pregnant. I was actually 3 months pregnant, a
Okay.
little bit earlier than that. It was all a blur. But I think if we had the baby before, if we wouldn't have started the business if I had the baby. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
There's no way. There's absolutely no way we would have been able to pull that off. It's so much work to be able to care for a newborn. So I think it was really essential for us to have started it before we did. I mean, I was pregnant and literally retiling the floor like by myself. I was like sanding wood and figuring it out.
Wow.
It was just a day by day thing. But because I didn't have to care for anybody but myself, I was still able to pull it off and do all the administrative work and whatever it required to get it off the ground. And honestly, it was a joy. It like gave me a purpose, something to focus on while I was pregnant. Instead of focusing on being pregnant.
Yeah.
Which can get very uncomfortable in the end. But it was a way to kind of connect with the community as well. And a lot of people were like, oh my God, you're crazy. Like, how are you doing it? You know, so it was a nice way to just sort of connect with people too and just get to know them and talk to them about how delusional I was about starting a business while I was pregnant.
Yeah. How was it? I mean, he told me it was very difficult once your child was born.
Yeah. I mean, Charles still works a 9 to 5. I quit my job to be able to do this. So luckily we didn't have that pressure on my back. But once the baby was here, it was like my entire day was wiped away. And it's still a struggle, you know, like we have a 6-month-old at home right now. He's a pretty easy kid for the most part, and it's still a ton of work.
Yeah.
Like my mom's there 3 days a week. His sisters are stepping in all the time. Like we've got a babysitter on call. Like it's true what they say. It takes a village.
Yeah.
Like I sometimes have to strap him to me and like get in the shop and I'm like behind the register and he's like kind of like, you know, bobbing his head. Sometimes he's sitting in the stroller because I got to get in there and do something to support my staff. It is what it is. Like you just make it work and like people appreciate it. But it's a ton of work.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna have a kid.
You might want to establish your business a little bit more. I can't say I recommend it.
I always say like it's either kid or no business or business and you know no kid.
You can have it all. You just can't have it at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, I think I can feel how much slower Chachis is growing because I'm not able to put my all into it. I mean, I don't know, maybe part of it is how it's supposed to grow at this rate, but that's how I feel is, I could be doing so much more. I could be getting so many more things ready and like moving faster. But it's the pace that we're at. Yeah. We're making it work.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Sandwiches are great.
Thank you.
Branding is great. I forgot to talk about the branding.
That's all me.
I mean, yeah.
You got the right
I always
person.
say like it's always good to it catches you, you know, when you see the branding, see the like aesthetic of
Thank
you know the space. It's very like eye catching and it's inviting. It makes you want to go in there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So those are some high points for establishment. I think a lot of people don't think about that sometimes.
Yes.
I mean, some places do, and then some places don't. I'm not saying everybody.
Totally agree.
But it's important.
It is important. I mean, you know, we were very intentional about the brand. I spent a lot of time tootling around, figuring out like, do I like this font? What's this, you know, the vibe? What is the energy? Like, what are we trying to look at? Like, are we trying to be retro, a little Italian? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
And so, you know, the shades of red that we went through was annoying, but like we finally landed on the right shade of red versus beige. And it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
You know, especially because we've been thinking about Chachis with an exit in mind. And so we're not just building a brand for San Pedro, we're building a brand for the West Coast, hopefully. And so I really had to think about like what makes this versatile, what's going to appeal to a large audience, like how do we get something here that feels cool, you know, feels up and coming, feels like a vibe. And so hopefully we've done that.
Yeah, I think you guys did. I mean, it hasn't even been a year yet.
Hasn't been a year yet.
You guys are progressed, it seems like, very well.
Thank you.
So congratulations to that.
Thank you. Yeah. Our 1 year anniversary is next month. Come through. We're going to have a big party in the parking lot.
Oh, that sounds like fun. You guys could have like a bunch of vendors and like DJs and stuff.
I think we're going to try to line up some San Pedro bands, have them come in, maybe a DJ, and then just like close off the parking lot right next to the laundromat and just, you know, parking lot pimping. Whatever they did.
Party.
Whatever they did in the 90s. That's what we're going to try to do.
That's actually, you guys are next to a laundromat?
We are.
Do people come get sandwiches when they're doing their laundry?
Do.
What a great.
They sure do.
You guys scored on that one.
I know. I would actually love to open a laundromat.
I would too.
Like, make it a cool laundromat, like a place to hang out.
Right?
So we're kind of doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how do you like owning a business in San Pedro? What are some of the perks about it? Like, what makes it special to like saying if you owned a place in the Bay?
So one of the things that I think is really special about San Pedro is that it still has a really strong sense of community. It's the kind of place where nobody passes through San Pedro because it's at the tip of a peninsula. So if you're in San Pedro, you're there because that's your destination. And there are tons of people that have been in San Pedro for generations. And it's the kind of place where after you've been there for a few years, you start seeing people you know everywhere you go. There are all kinds of community events. And so one thing that I didn't appreciate as a perk of being a business owner is how much it further embeds you into the community.
Yeah.
And like we've moved around a lot throughout our lives. We lived in big cities. We've never felt such a strong sense of community as being in San Pedro. And having Chachis just means like suddenly we're getting recognized when we go different places. Like people want to talk to us about, you know, whatever we're doing. And we just know more and more people. We see 100 people a day coming into the shop. We know faces. We know everyone in our community. So that's just been incredible. Like I've never felt that before anywhere that I've lived. And it's been wonderful.
Yeah. San Pedro's like kind of blowing up slowly.
That's right.
And it's going to take off like in a couple years.
I think it definitely is. We're trying to buy a house before that happens.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see if we can get in time.
Yeah. I'm predicting before the Olympics.
Yeah. They've got that whole West Harbor development that's going to be opening up soon. That's going to bring in a lot of people and just tons of high rises going up down by the harbor. It's exciting, honestly. I think San Pedro's
it's gonna be wild.
Yeah. So there's a whole new wave of business that's coming.
Yeah, my mom has worked for San Pedro like pretty much my entire life. I've worked for the port.
Oh, cool.
So I've always been in San Pedro around it, but live in Long Beach for a long time. And it's just I love old San Pedro, but it's really interesting to see it like start expanding and being like a destination more of, you know, instead of just like the locals kind of just being there. So
exactly,
you guys will be part of that, you know, and bring in more business. It'll be good for all businesses.
And there's a lot of young entrepreneurs coming into San Pedro now and opening some really interesting places.
Oh, yeah.
So it's been exciting to connect with them and just see, how it's changing.
Yeah, I'm excited. I just missed the fish market. That's the only thing.
Yes.
I used to go there all the time.
It's slightly different now, but it's still there.
Yeah. What are some things that you're looking forward to in the future?
What I'm looking forward to in the future is freedom. A big part of our motivation for starting a business is we don't want to work a 9 to 5 our whole lives. So I'm excited to get Chachis to the point where it can run itself. It frees us to just do more creative pursuits. We have all kinds of business ideas that we want to launch in San Pedro. I want to do a tiki bar. I want to do a stew shop. I've got like all kinds of stuff on the back burner that I'm ready to launch. And we're just hoping we can get this going and have the freedom to just be creative and be free again.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when, you know, someone will open a restaurant or a space with not really like an end goal, you know? It's just like, oh, we're just opening it. But like, what's your end goal? And I feel like that's a conversation that we don't have a lot.
Yeah.
You know, what do you want? Do you franchise it or, you know, open other businesses or, you know, do you want to just keep running this until you like can't move anymore? Like, it's a lot of things to think about. I think about all the time. It's like, do I want to open a restaurant? And, you know, what's my end goal? Do I want to be working like 16, 18-hour days?
Totally.
Not really.
My goal is not to have to work.
Yes.
That's my dream.
No, that's my goal too. I want to open a place that's sufficient and efficient and can run itself and give tools to people that want to do well in an establishment and give them power and let me sit behind and, you know, but I have to, obviously I'm going to need to work hard to get to that point.
Oh yeah.
And it takes time, but yeah, it's just a conversation. Like I don't want to break my back
totally
anymore.
And I don't need to be super rich.
Yeah.
I just need to be free to do what I want with my time.
Exactly.
That's the dream.
Do you have any advice for anyone that wants to open a restaurant, even if they don't have culinary experience like you do? Because I think that's really interesting. I've had a few guests on here that have opened up spots and they don't have any culinary background and they're doing really well. And I think it brings a different game to the table, you know, because they're not like, oh, I want to make this the best like restaurant that's ever been here in the city. And I have like all these amazing like skills, but they don't think about the people.
That's
and
so true.
I think that's a part that's missing.
100%. Every restaurant, it's not just a place that exists and provides food. It's a place that exists and has a relationship with the community around it. And when people go out to get something at a restaurant, also, a lot of times it's not just about the food; it's about the whole experience. That's not something that comes as a surprise. But I think that regardless of what you're serving, if you can serve it in a way and create a space where people feel connected to it and feel like it's an aesthetic experience, like it's a community experience, like that's a big part of what people will show up for.
Yeah.
So even if you don't have a strong culinary background and are getting like super creative, if you create a place people want to be, I think that's going to take you a long ways. And something that is more and more lacking in our society today is those third places.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Yeah, I talk about this all the time. Yeah.
Oh, great.
That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
No problem.
That is great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for coming by and bringing some sandwiches.
Oh, it was
I really
my pleasure.
enjoyed half of one. Now I'm excited to try the tuna one because I love a tuna melt. I didn't know that's what it was, but now I'm excited.
Good.
And I haven't
sure
eaten,
you'll love
so
it.
I'm great. If anyone hasn't been to Chachis, check it out. They're in San Pedro. And Chachis, sorry.
It's okay.
I keep thinking about Office Space.
Right. No pieces of flair at our shop.
Yeah, no pieces of flair there. Maybe Jennifer Aniston. I'm just kidding.
Hopefully.
Yeah, check them out in San Pedro and tell them, you saw them on Linecheck. And we hope many successes in the future and for you guys to do well. Happy New Year. Well, thank you so much for coming here. It was a pleasure to have you guys on the podcast. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
That's it. That's Linecheck. We'll catch you guys later. Bye.